you want to talk about what discipline is going to look like for your children. How are you guys going to do that together? Discussing finances, what that's going to look like, the expectation of what child support is going to look like.
Yeah. Your blended family has a 100% chance of success when you do it God's way.
We are Blended Kingdom Families, and we want to provide biblical resources to heal and restore families with a message of hope for the next generation.
Let's get after it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the BKF podcast. We are excited to be continuing our series on beginning to blend. This is part 2. So if you missed part 1, go back to last week, check that out. We talked all about the dating process and it was amazing. Also, if you haven't already, take an opportunity, like, share, comment, send us your feedback. We would love to interact with you and just be in community together.
Yes.
So today we're going to talk about the engagement process. This is the
engagement
really
process.
fun process.
Yeah, engagement. I think that was probably the most fun.
Yeah.
Not that it's not fun right now. That's not what I meant.
I mean, it's engagements are really fun.
It is fun.
I mean,
It's
because
a sweet
you're
time.
preparing for this amazing marriage, and so we're gonna dive into how we got engaged,
How we got
the
engaged.
smoothness by which I proposed.
Wow, y'all. Let me tell you.
Before,
no, it was really good.
Before I tell the story, though, because this will kind of piggyback on last week's. I remember before we got engaged, we're talking about last week, when you're dating, and sometimes you just got to be clear on your expectations.
Oh, yeah.
So Vanessa was pretty clear. Like, hey, listen, I got a plan.
I said, I'm not messing around.
If you want to be a part of this plan, this is kind of the timeline, because I got things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And which was good for me because I think that I needed that push.
Yeah.
But our engagement was a lot of fun. So we went to New York.
Yes.
So we had a trip planned for New York.
4th of July.
It was a 4th of July trip.
Yep.
And the one thing I would say, if you are not engaged, I will give you this piece of advice. We had taken a 4-day trip, but I proposed day 1 because
Yes.
you don't want to wait till the end.
Don't
because
wait till the
you're
end.
nervous.
Yes.
And so I'll let you tell a little bit about how you experienced the story.
Yeah, you and I had dated probably about 5 months, and we actually took a break because you had moved, and then we came back together, and so it was probably 3 months after we had gotten back together.
So we dated a total of like 7,
9
8
months, something. I think we dated a whole 9 months before we got engaged, so it was pretty fast for us. And I remember I was getting ready to start school in the fall, and I was applying for nursing programs. And I just remember I told you, I was like, look, I need to know if this engagement is going to be in the fall. You don't have to tell me the month or the day, but I was just very like, I need to know these things.
She was taking a little bit of the romance out of it.
Just a little
She's
bit.
like, okay. So I had to do my best.
But long story short, we had this trip planned to Central Park or to New York, and we were going to Central Park. And the first night you said, hey, I have a surprise for you. I was like, okay. And if you've ever been to New York and in Central Park, they do carriage rides. It's very common. Like you see it all the time, and they do tours. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like I've always wanted to do one of these. And we were going to a really nice restaurant. So Scott had said, hey, make sure you dress really nice. The carriage ride's actually going to take us to the restaurant. I was like, oh, that is so cool. So, we get on our carriage ride and we're going, and our tour guide takes us all throughout Central Park. And we get to this one area where Bow Bridge is. Now, Bow Bridge is very iconic. It's in a lot of movies. It's in the Ghostbusters movie. It's in
Almost any movie that involves Central Park.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's in so many movies, but it's also iconic because so many people propose on the bridge. So as we're coming up to Bow Bridge and there's this big fountain there, our horse carriage driver, I guess you would say, had said, he said, yeah, so many people get engaged here and married here. He was like, you never know, you could get lucky. And I honestly didn't.
I don't remember him saying that.
He said that, and I didn't think anything about it. I was like, oh, okay. But y'all, I was in high heels. And I was in this
It was
dress,
July, and it was
hot and humid.
Yeah.
And I remember we started walking, and I'm like, okay, I see the bridge, let's go. And Scott's like, no, like let's go experience the whole thing. And by this point, y'all, I was getting mad because
which is usually right before you propose.
Yeah. And there was this reggae band playing on the side. There were a lot of people. Long story short, we get over the bridge and Scott's like, hey, let's stop and pray for a minute. And I'm like, I'm in high heels. We're in Central Park and you want to pray. And I'm dripping in sweat. Like it just didn't make sense. But then as we were praying, I remember Scott talking about like for the rest of our lives and this. And when I opened my eyes, he had the ring in front of me, and it was actually a very sweet moment.
Yeah.
Of course I said yes. And then we got on the carriage ride, and he took us to the place where we had dinner.
Wait a second. Let me interject the story here. So it didn't quite go as I planned, because I didn't plan for a lot of people to be actually on the bridge.
There were a lot of people
and
on the bridge.
So we actually walked across the bridge, and then kind of were walking on our way back. And then I looked, and there were still a lot of people. And I was like, when you're going to propose, you kind of look at it and you're like, well, how am I supposed to do this? And I kind of envisioned in my head like this opening of space to do this. And that wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really nervous and really like I can't not do this. And so I had to go. So it was really cool.
No, it was a really cool process. But you guys, we know that in the engagement process, as you're beginning to blend, again, this is going to look different for everybody. And so what are some things that you can do as you're in the engagement and process that can better prepare you for this, for the blend, for when, after marriage has come, you're all living together, you have maybe your kids, their kids, you're planning to have our kids, things like that. Like, how can we make this go as smooth as possible?
Yeah. Well, the first, as therapists, once the proposal has happened and you guys are told all the family, I think the first thing is really getting into premarital counseling.
It's very good.
So I have done programs, and usually my programs are anywhere between 10 to 12 weeks long.
Yeah.
And it's really where we start uncovering and planning for not only the spiritual side, but the practical side of marriage and blending marriage. So what does premarital counseling look like? So first of all, I would recommend getting a good biblical counselor.
Yes.
So a lot of churches have these programs, or you can go and just find an LPC or a licensed marriage and family therapist and say, hey, do you do premarital counseling? So lock into that. And I will tell you, statistically, those who do premarital counseling have a much higher chance of success in marriage, because there are things that you just need to discuss before you get into it.
Yeah. And, guys, some of those things that you're like, as you're engaged and you're moving towards marriage, the things that you really want to uncover, or the rocks that you want to pick up and turn over, so to speak. You want to talk about what discipline is going to look like for your children. How are you guys going to do that together? Finances is another fun thing. You guys, we get so many messages and DMs and emails from couples who are on the brink of divorce, again, because their spouse doesn't agree with their other spouse paying the child support payment or this and that. We get so many emails on that. So discussing finances, what that's going to look like, the expectation of what child support is going to look like. If you're bringing how you're going to do savings accounts for all of the children. These are all things that you need to talk about. Other things to talk about is co-parenting relationships and how is that dynamic going to work? For us, we have a text thread that has the 4 of us on it. And then we also have one that has 3 of us on it as well. And so, discussing those things, what that's going to look like, schedules, in-laws, ex-in-laws, the family dynamics. These are all things that you want to sit down and really think through, really pray through. And again, get that biblical counselor, get someone who can help guide you through these things. Maybe, for you, Scott, you got married for the first time, and it was my second marriage. So there were things about marriage you just didn't have a clue about. And so
there were a lot of things about marriage I had no clue about.
Well, and I obviously didn't do it right the first time either, but going and, because we did counseling right after we got married, and we did, I think it was we did the Prepare and Enrich program, which was about 12 weeks. And it really showed us where we agreed on things, but where we differed drastically. And we worked through those things. And I will say that was pivotal in that time. So you guys, everything that you said, Scott, premarital counseling and family counseling, are the kid, are you going to, live in the same, live in one person's house or the other person's house? Are you going to buy a new house together? There's so many things to talk about that really need to be discussed in that premarital period.
Well, and you mentioned family counseling, and I want to make sure that I clarify how important that is. Now, depending upon the age of your children, if your kids are really little, obviously we're not going to have these serious adult conversations with our little kids. And remember, in the the dating stage, we preface that on, having fun, enjoying that. And then maybe in the engagement period, maybe you even involve little kids into your engagement, which is just crazy cool. But in that pre-counseling, if you have older kids, it may be a great opportunity either for you all to go see a counselor together, or maybe have some tools that your counselor has provided you to go have a conversation. It's really kind of like breaking the news.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who reached out to me not too long ago, and he was really nervous that he was going to tell his adult children that evening and her adult children about their plans to become engaged.
Yeah.
And his new role as a stepfather and what that looked like for adult children, but really not only to the children, but also to the grandchildren. So he was a step grandparent to the grandchildren. So we know that happens. So that process of just sitting them down and having that really detailed conversation is really good with the guidance of a counselor, so that you can make sure that you may only have one first time to do that.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you prepare as much as you can.
Yeah, as much as possible. And you guys, we know that, sometimes it goes the way we hope that it does, and sometimes it goes the way that we didn't see it coming, but I think having as much preparation and resources and just having that toolbox of tools is just going to better equip you and support you as you're, going through that process.
Yeah. And all of this, if you're in that engagement process right now, I know you're excited, but we want you to prepare.
Yeah.
We want you to prepare this and be thoughtful about preparing for marriage.
Yeah.
So next week, we're going to go into the newly married, the newlywed stage.
Yeah.
And guys, just in case, if you want more information on this, or you're like, hey, I need more information.
Specifics.
So Vanessa and I wrote a book called Blended and Redeemed. It's the go-to field guide for the modern step family, and it's on Amazon. It released last year, and it's just packed full of resources where we talk extensively about preparing to blend. So if you haven't, go check that out.
Or it's called Blending Your Bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blending Your Bunch. So, yes.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. Next week, we're going to talk about the newly married stage as we go into week 3 of this 4-part series. So next week, we will see you then. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Be blessed in all that you do.
Hey guys, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
And you can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we hang out with more amazing podcast guests. And remember, nothing will be impossible with God.